Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my good friend here, Brian Walker from Dbacks Academy. And today we're going to take a look at Derek Stingley out of LSU. Really interesting prospect. A lot of people have him graded even higher than Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati. And the Giants could be in line to get a guy like Derek Stingley who could fit their schematics honestly perfectly with Wink Martindale taking over as the defensive coordinator, Brian. But before we dive into his film and kind of talk about James Bradberry for a minute and really digest what these players, like especially Stingley, can offer the Giants in the first round. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Just had a birthday, so feeling good. But you know
Happy
what?
birthday.
Appreciate that. I know I kind of threw that out there, but I just I'm excited about what the Giants are doing in terms of the draft. I think this is a great opportunity to get younger blood in the locker room and get to see, the growth of the team, especially with the new coaching staff. But just kind of gearing into Bradberry, just real quick. I know we wanted to talk about it. I think the biggest thing for him with this scheme, him being a bigger type of corner and a Richard Sherman type of corner, I think the man-to-man, the press might be a lot difficult because, you know what, it's hard for a lot of big DBs to get into their press stance, especially with the hips and just opening up. Not saying he can't do that, but I think the biggest thing for him is he's probably at best in a Tampa Bay or a cover 3 Seahawks type of defense where he can open up and actually play a little basketball because he's built like a basketball player, use that range of motion. So, that's going to be interesting what they do with Bradberry. Is similar to the Baker Mayfield situation, which is a huge topic. But, you never know what can happen. Later on in his career, he might end up being a safety like Charles Woodson or Rod Woodson. So I think there's still a few years left and even more to his career, but I'm interested to see how they use him or where he goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I'm looking at James Bradberry and what he did last year for the Giants, right, he kind of struggled playing man coverage. And Patrick Graham's roots were built in cover one. He loves man coverage, loves to blitz. But the problem was the defense was on the field so often. They didn't really have the man coverage corners and the pass rush to get it done. And the beginning of the year, they tried to play a lot of cover one man coverage, and Bradberry got exposed a lot because faster receivers were just beating him, burning him downfield. And like you said, he couldn't really open up his hips, and he didn't have the makeup speed to catch up all the time. And in Wink Martindale's system, I guess my question for you is, like, when you look at Wink Martindale's system, heavy man coverage, what is like the ideal cornerback that you want? And I imagine like Derek Stingley is going to fit that mold. But like, what is the ideal cornerback you want when you're sending a lot of blitzers? Like, what do those cornerbacks have to be good at?
Well, I think for me, the ideal corner is obviously a Deion Sanders and Darrelle Revis type of guy where, there's a basketball background where they're used to moving their feet, especially from 0 to 5. Because, look, if you're blitzing, you have to be prepared for that ball to come out fast. So that 0 to 5 it's almost like basketball. It's a lot of lateral movement. You don't want a corner who's really, really stiff and can't really open up or do a speed turn. So the ideal corner has to have great hips, has to have a strong base, similar to a Derek Stingley and a few other guys. But a Darrelle Revis is a guy who's perfect for that. And that's who stands out because he can sit and he's able to move east and west.
Right. And when you're looking at Derek Stingley, I do want to give you guys some a little bit more information on, what he has accomplished in the past. So a lot of Derek Stingley's best games came back in 2019 during his freshman season. Last year, he only played 154 snaps and then 429 snaps in 2020. But everyone really saw that 2019 version of Derek Stingley and was like, holy crap, this guy could be the next elite level cornerback in the NFL. He allowed a 38.3% completion rate for 624 yards. Teams tried to pick on him because he was a freshman, but he absolutely balled out. 589 coverage snaps, which is a ton of coverage snaps. 36 receptions allowed on 94 targets. Like, you're not going to see many corners get targeted 94 times in a season, and Derek Stingley kind of stood his ground there pretty damn well. A lot of people have Stingley as the number one corner in this draft class based on that skill set he showed back in 2019. looking at him as a pure, like, tangible player, first class speed. He's not afraid of getting beaten deep because he's so good at predicting what receivers are going to do. He has a press man pedigree, lined up in press man on 49% of his career coverage snaps. So if you're looking at Wink Martindale's system, if you're Wink Martindale himself, you're looking at Derek Stingley saying, this is the guy who I want alongside Adoree Jackson, assuming that James Bradberry's cut or traded. He is the perfect player. He has extremely loose feet and hips. When you're looking at Stingley as a pure tangible athlete, he has everything you want, like that 0 to 5, like you mentioned, that speed makeup ability is impressive. But, how important is it to be able to catch up to those speedsters that he's going to have to face off against in the NFL? Because, he's going to have to take on some of those fast guys. And how is he going to kind of, I guess, utilize his skill set to manage those slants or those out and ups? How does he use those skills to, limit big time playmakers in the NFL?
Well, for me, I think the importance of speed is something where it's the tool belt, right? And I look at it like this: if I'm ever in a jam or if I'm ever in a situation where a receiver does a great move, I'm able to catch up. And that's why it's important for a lot of DBs to have speed. The biggest disadvantage is we don't know the route. So a good receiver is always going to beat a good DB. And I was taught that from my dad when he was my coach, where you don't know the route. You don't know what's going to happen. So you always have to have that makeup speed, always have to have that extra gear. For him, that slant route, like we said, if he gets beat on a line, he's able to recover where he can bat the ball down or tip the ball, which, especially with the zone blitz, it's going to be there, or whatever type of blitz. So that speed is going to help him. Like you said, his feet is very loose. He has a basketball background. And just to add to it, his grandfather was a receiver in the NFL. His father is a baseball guy and played some football. I think he has that pedigree of professionalism. And I think New York would not be like a shock to him in terms of just the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think he's going to be shocked by the New York market, right? Like no, I don't think playing at LSU, it seems like he's been in the spotlight for a long time. So I think he'll be more than capable. But let's dive into the film here, take a look at some of his skills and, what he's shown in the past. And what you're going to see is a little bit different from Sauce Gardner, who's a lot more lanky. He's longer. He's kind of like fits a really nice zone, like kind of a press zone coverage corner. Like he can really take advantage of those instincts. But if you want a guy on an island, on an island, Derek Stingley is going to be your guy day one. The only concern is the injuries, and that's a really good argument to make over the last couple of years. Do you have to be worried about the injuries? He's coming off Lisfranc injury with his foot. We saw Kyle Rudolph go through that last year. We've seen Evan Ingram go through that. And I wouldn't be necessarily too concerned about it because, like, Evan Ingram came back and he was running just fine. His athleticism was the same. Derek Stingley is extremely young. I don't think it's going to hinder him. His pro day, he kicked absolute ass. He was phenomenal during his pro day. I mean, his pro day alone catapulted him from a fringe top 10 pick to into the top 5, like overnight. So that was really interesting. We'll see if that comes to, fruition during the draft. But let's dive into the film here and kind of take a look at what his skill set offers.
So real quick, let me just looking at the film. This is the championship. It's actually his freshman year. This is the SEC, but actually his freshman year where he's playing press, you can see. And then at the bottom of the clip, he does a great job of making sure he's in front of the receiver. So as he's running, he closes that gap, right? And the ball's in the air. He recognizes that, squeezes the receiver, and gets an interception. So this is against top-tier talent. And that's what showed great ball skills, great opportunity. He, to me, is a high-level, high-value type of cornerback, which means that, I call it the dime type of player, which means he's disciplined, he's intelligent, he's mean, and he has ego. And the ego he has ego. When the ball's in the air, that's his ball. So he does a great job of making sure, like I said, playing in front of the guy, making sure 0 to 5 is like the lateral movement, right? He understands the route. Once it becomes a fade, he wants to get right to the hip, and he closes it. And he plays actually a different type of technique than a lot of DBs. He plays it more like the Revis type of technique where he fronts it, which means he doesn't turn his back towards the receiver. He fronts the receiver where he sees the ball, right? And he sees the receiver and he takes it at a high point. Or if the receiver's a leaper, the receiver comes down, he rips it apart. So I'm familiar with that technique, being a smaller DB and playing at a high level at Washington State. But, it's actually a really good technique in terms of when you're playing at sidelines, or, that receiver is a leaper like a Randy Moss.
Right. And something that really intrigues me about Derek Stingley is actually two things. One, he is so good at getting his head around to locate the football when it's in the air. That's something that we've seen like Eli Apple fail to do in the past. If you're a Giants fan, you remember he would always forget to turn his head around and he would miss opportunities. He'd get mossed all the time. But Derek Stingley has the awareness to know when the receiver is getting ready to make a play, right? Like that's like what cornerbacks, you always have to be watching their eyes, watching their hips, like seeing those little details that keep you aware of what's happening behind you. But the other thing that you mentioned before, which really stood out to me, discipline. What is so disciplined about his game? His feet. His feet are some of the most disciplined I've seen of a cornerback because, like you said, he fronts the receiver, but not only just during like the while the play is going and the break of the route, but also at the beginning of the route before the route's even started. You can see he does not fall for any tricks. He does not fall for the bait. The receiver here kind of gives him this little jab step to the inside,
Yeah.
and you can see Stingley does not fall for it. His left foot drops back just an inch in case, but he so quickly reacts and changes direction. He keeps his base so his center of gravity so low and his base so foundationally strong. He's able to react very nicely, and I think that fundamentally is why a lot of teams are so much higher on him than Sauce Gardner.
No, I agree. I mean, just to add in terms of what he's doing, actually, he's playing a semi-inch out where, if the receiver likes to dance a lot, you're going to back up and don't want to get too close, and reach and miss. But the patience is where I say it's important for a lot of DBs to show that discipline and be patient in the route, because you never know if the receiver's going inside or out, but he does a great job. So right here, this is where I call him a dime player when I was looking at the film, because this is the intelligence part, right? As you can see, they're in a 3-by-1, but it's 11 personnel. There's a bunch type of system. He is on a single side, and you can see that the number one receiver on his side is really, really tight, right? So instead of playing inside or head up, he decides I'm going to play outside shade. So now anything that comes my way, I'm able to react. And most corners have trouble with that. And he doesn't backpedal. He does a great job. It's a Nick Saban type of shuffle. He does a cross step, and he sees everything in front of him, gets right to the top, the nearest shoulder, and makes a really, really good play in terms of making that the quarterback have to scramble. But right here, like I said before, this is where the next level, where you recognize the personnel, sees that the receiver's doing a inside stem, plays to the top shoulder, and then squeezes it so that the quarterback, he's scrambling and, ultimately has to throw somewhere in a different direction. But this is where I said the intelligence aspect in terms of him becoming a high-level cornerback is important.
Yeah, he's also so great at just avoiding traffic. That was another thing that kind of stood out on this play. Like he has to dodge his own player coming across the formation here and the referee, and he has to get around those guys and then get to the receiver and take this route away. So I thought it was just a really nice job all around, from using his awareness to like avoid the players coming across the formation and the referee himself. And he actually has to like go around him. So the quarterback here, if you make this throw, this could be a easy interception, even a pick six. Really nicely done by Derek Stingley here.
Yeah, definitely great closing speed as I saw. So that's a great point. Yeah.
Let's see here. So he, I believe, is on the top of your screen.
Yep,
At
top
the
of the screen.
41-yard line.
Top of the screen. And so, like I said before, he recognizes first it starts off as 3-by-1. He recognizes that the number one receiver does a crack block, and he goes right away. So this is where, like I said before, understanding what the formation is and what's going on. He goes right away. He makes a play on the running back. And this is where, in terms of the dime aspect, where the mean part, this is where you have to be mean as a DB. He comes down, he's mean, he gets right to the ball, and he makes a tackle where it's a fumble. Not too many corners tackle like safeties and strong and outside linebackers. My biggest thing would say just be careful with the head placement, but everything else in terms of he's not afraid to come right downhill and make a tackle. And then, especially in the division that we're in, the Giants, you have running backs. You have a two-headed running back with Dallas, and you can see they like to do a lot of bubbles in terms of getting the running backs in good space. So if he can come down, make a hit, and tackle for loss, that makes the second down play a long third down play, which ultimately that puts us in an advantage to get the ball. So he does a great job at recognizing the crack block, coming downhill, and finishing the play.
Yeah, and like you said, NFC East full of guys who love these bubble screens. We saw Devonta Smith last year do it a ton. That's his bread and butter at Alabama was these kind of screen bubble passes that he would take with those long strides. CeeDee Lamb, another great guy who's capable of doing those things. Curtis Samuel, who signed with the Washington last year but wasn't able to really get on the field. He's another guy that I would be looking to do stuff like this with. So the Giants need very aggressive, fast corners who can react quickly to these screen passes. And I think that ultimately Derek Stingley has the visuals and definitely has the speed to close these out very, very quickly. And at the very least, he's fast enough. Even if he misses the tackle, he's fast enough to disrupt the play enough that help will get there in time without it becoming a big play. I know he's not the most physically imposing corner. He has struggled in the past with tackling, but the speed itself will slow down a runner just enough for your linebackers to get there, or your safety help to get there. So that's something that I think just the speed alone is something to be aware of when it comes to Stingley and his qualities.
You know what? In hindsight, I think with the NFL and what the Giants will do, he'll be with a lot more professional help in terms of his body and just taking care of himself. So bottom of the screen, I'm seeing he's noticing he's close to the goal line in terms of he's closer to the red zone. The biggest thing I will say is he has to be careful, and this is something that I teach a lot of the DBs. You have to be careful with making sure that when you open up, ready to play the fade, that you don't really cross too much. Because if that receiver, Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens, is good for this, they like to show fade and they like to come right back under and run a slant. So, but that was the only thing that I would say, okay, just be careful. I think a shuffle might be good, but he does a great job. Like, this is where his catch-up speed is good. He does a great job recognizing that Vandy's trying to throw backside. And if you notice, he's doing the Darrelle Revis technique where he's getting his hands on his shoulder and he's playing for that backside throw. I don't know why you would do a backside throw closer to the goal line, which is difficult when you can just go to the end zone. But, he did a great job playing both sides of goal line and the sidelines. So I was impressed with how he closes the gap. That was the biggest thing. And this is where the patience I thought was important too, in terms of his press.
Yeah, so something that I've noticed about his game that he does a lot, he always uses that inside hand on those out-breaking routes, especially when the receivers are jabbing to the outside. They may go in for the slant. What he does is he uses that inside hand to kind of give himself some leverage on their inside shoulder. So if they do go inside, he can swing his body around using that leverage he already has and change his body direction. But like you said, he is a little bit like he is like at this point in time, if this receiver decided to go inside, a faster guy might be able to beat him if he crossed him. But overall, I do like how he uses his hand to give himself a little bit of leverage and a little bit of time in case that receiver does jut inside. But, if like we're kind of seeing here in the film, if you want a corner who's going to make an impact day one, you can leave on an island and allow him to work. He'll be able to do it. Like there will be like Sauce Gardner. One of the biggest cons for him is he gets grabby at times. Stingley is not a grabby corner. He has his hands there, but he is very good at not grabbing on. Sauce has in the past grabbed on two guys, and the Giants have also been connected to Kaiir Elam from Florida, and he had 7 penalties in 10 games last year. So that's another guy who could be a first-round cornerback, but another good player as well. He kind of translates better to his zone system coming in out of the collegiate system now. But Derek Stingley for Wink Martindale's system, if it was between him and Sauce, it's really hard to decide. But we'll talk about that at the end of the film.
Great points that you make. Yeah, great points. He, like I said, he definitely does a great job getting his hands on the receiver as well. So top of the screen, as you can see now, this right here, this has to be his freshman year because right there, I think he was just getting used to the SEC ball. You could tell he got stuck a little bit with his press. But this is where, like anything, we're gonna get beat as DBs, especially in the NFL. This is where I would say the closing speed comes to factor and comes to play. He does a great job, and this is where the ego aspect of, you know what, I'm not gonna get beat. I'm gonna finish the play. Every DB gets beat. It's up to what are you gonna do when you are beat? Are you going to finish the play or are you going to give up? And he shows no quit. And I like the fact that the receiver does have inside leverage, but he closes that gap knowing that he has a safety over the top. He closes that gap, gets right to the hip, and makes an incomplete play. So I was definitely impressed with that.
I also like how a lot of his biggest highlights come against really good teams.
Yes. He for him, there was a video that came out with his practice. You know, two of the top receivers in the NFL, he practiced with those guys every day. Also, one of the top Super Bowl appearance quarterbacks, he had it with him every day. You know, I look at it like this. If you're experiencing everyday greatness, you can only elevate your game. And so I like the fact that they showed the practice film, him going against two receivers who made the Pro Bowl, a quarterback who's made not only the Pro Bowl, but most improved and went to the Super Bowl. So you can see the impact that DJ or Derek Stingley has. You know, the biggest thing is when he was healthy and he was on the field, they went to the national championship. When he didn't, when he wasn't healthy and he wasn't on the field, they had a struggling season. So it shows you not only what he's doing and his value, but the importance what he is, especially with his team in everyday practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, I mean, right here he's going up against Trevor Lawrence. You know, like he's gone up against some of the best college football players to ever live. Trevor Lawrence is like known as one of the best college players ever.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow in practice every single day. Jamar Chase, as you said, like he continuously practices and trains against some of the NFL's top talents. At least it was at the collegiate level, and you know that talent was still there. But you know, I think that he's also been on the biggest stage in games. You know, it's not like he was playing at a small school and he wasn't really going into, you know, competitive games. He's played at the top level during his freshman year and balled out. So like that's a pretty good indication of what he's capable of doing. If he was given a little bit more time in terms of health, if he was healthy and given some consistency and continuity, his upside is just out of this world. The question is, can an NFL team keep him healthy? I think that his injuries aren't like ligament stuff. I think that they were kind of like anomalies for the most part. So hopefully they're not going to be like nagging stuff down the road.
Well, just to play on the injury aspect, when you think of college, you know, at the end of the day, most of these kids aren't eating healthy. One, I mean, you have the cafeteria card and, you know, you're eating anything and everything, right? But two, how often do you have time to recover? In college, you have spring ball, you have winter workouts, you have a lot of things after the season that, truth be told, your body doesn't get opportunity to heal. I don't know what's going on. I'm like I said before, I'm sure everything's evolved since I was there, but I think the biggest thing is time to recover. I don't know how often a lot of college kids gets time to recover. I was speaking with a Big Ten coach, and the biggest thing he said was, you know what, after their break, they only get 2 weeks, and then they got to go right back into football. That is a short window of an off season, and so that's why a lot of these guys get these injuries, and it's unfortunate, you know, because the kids are trying to go play football in the NFL for the next level. But I think that comes to play with a lot of colleges in terms of how often does the kids recover. But just back to the screen in terms of what he's doing right here at the bottom. At the end of the day, I love the fact that, especially in a Giants system where you play press, he is getting his hands and he's being active. A lot of times people get their hands, excuse me, and they start to grab and they lose their feet. He has loose feet and he's great with it. So he's getting his hands on the receiver, he's getting active, and he's playing the upfield position. And as the play develops, you know, he's allowing himself to, that little jab right there allows himself to get a feel. He's not grabbing using his hands. He's jabbing that receiver to go, okay, well, like you said before, if you go inside, I'm able to maneuver. So he's getting a feel for the guy. You know, he's allowing to see what the route is. Like I said, 0 to 5 is a basketball lateral. And then 5 to 10, I always call it the hockey, and then 10 and up becomes the track. So he does a great job of playing that and recognizing the route. Again, bottom of the screen, he's right there, does a great job. Biggest thing, like I always say, be careful with the cross step, because if your first few movements is a cross, that guy can get you. That's why I like to add a shuffle. But he has such great fluid hips that even when he does a cross step and the receiver goes inside, he's able to play top field. He does what you say, get that hand on the guy, flips his hips, and he's right in a great position to make a play. Does a great job.
Honestly, the way he's able to flip his hips and his makeup speed is going to be extremely dangerous for quarterbacks in the NFL, because like if you're let's say he's going up against Kadarius Toney, for example, and Kadarius Toney right here decides I'm going to cut inside. And a quarterback's like, okay, I see Kadarius Toney, he's open, he has leverage in this scenario. Then by the time you're throwing this ball, of course, a lot of these are timing routes. The second you throw this ball, you already know that Derek Stingley has swiveled his hips, because he has very fluid hips in that sense. And he has the makeup speed to catch up and maybe even undercut some of these routes, especially if they're deeper, So when you look at him as like a physical prospect, he has everything you want to be able to make up on these slants, even if he's getting crossed. Like you said before, you got to be careful on being crossed. And he plays extremely tight coverage. Like if he gets crossed, it's easy for a fast receiver to break away. You need to have that makeup speed to catch up at times. So, that kind of like wraps up the film portion of this. But I guess like my main question for you is, a lot of people would rather have Sauce Gardner because of his health history is a lot cleaner than Derek Stingley's. But even though he might not be as good of a scheme fit, what would your argument against that be? Like saying, disregarding the injury, like history, why do you think Derek Stingley is worth taking the risk on over Sauce?
Well, my biggest argument is this. He checks every box in terms of being a high value player. He's a football player first. He has the pedigree in terms of he's had his grandfather in the NFL, his father as a professional athlete. He's not shied away from competition. He went to the LSU where they won a national championship, and he played against two of the top receivers in the NFL. No disrespect to Sauce, but Sauce popped up on the screen late in the game. I'm sure he was a project with great coaching, and he developed into become a great athlete. The biggest thing, my knocks with him was watching the combine drills. I felt he was a lot stiffer than I expected to be as light as he is. And what I mean by light, he's around 185, 190, but still he's long enough where I'm thinking you should be a lot more fluid. Now, to be the top corner prospect, I can't say, like anything, you have to be in the right situation. Success is situational, like anything. But for him, if you're that stiff and you're playing in a scheme where you have to play press maybe 80% of the time or even 90% of the time, it's going to be a while for you to develop and understand, well, maybe I need an off season to develop some hip movement, some running, some flexibility. Now, like I said, it doesn't mean that he's not working on that and he can't get better. But I just looked at the way Stingley's hips moved, the way he was able to, when he was in a bad situation, recover and play the ball. Stingley reminds me more of a Revis type in terms of from his hips on down. He has a really, really good base. He has a baseball base where I could say that thighs, glutes, hammies, you know what I'm saying? Where he's strong right there. He can sit and play that press coverage. Also, one thing about penalties, they can cost us. So I think the biggest thing is we can't afford for a guy who in college was known for grabbing. Now you're in the NFL, and one thing is about those officials, they want to see points on the board just as much. So any type of grabbing, throw the yellow flag, and that puts us in a position where, defensively, we don't help out the offense.
Right. So I guess that's your answer. That's the justification as to why Derek Stingley would be, better suited for the Giants, and ultimately why he could end up being picked before Sauce Gardner. But nonetheless, both players are phenomenal, and they, would fit specific schemes nicely at the next level. So it just depends. Are the Giants willing to go with a player like Sauce, who might take a little bit longer to develop into a press man coverage corner. Whereas Stingley, that is his bread and butter right now. You're really just hoping like Stingley's upside, I think, is the most. You're really just hoping he can get rid of those health concerns. The Giants have been plagued with health concerns. Their field is known for taking ankles. So that's the biggest question mark, like, can we depend on that? But I will say that I do believe that the new coaching staff will put some new things into place, and hopefully they can iron out some of the deficiencies. But that kind of wraps up our Derek Stingley film breakdown and video, taking a look at what he's capable of and why the Giants should definitely consider him with one of their 2 first-round picks. Brian, I really appreciate you coming in and helping us out and kind of giving us your knowledge and insight into this unbelievable player. So I really appreciate you. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
No, I appreciate it. I was going to add something real quick and say that, hey, if Stingley, say a situation happens where outside doesn't work, he's fluid enough to play inside. So, that is also an upside of where I don't know if Sauce has ever, looking at his film and studying the young man, I think he has upside to be the best corner. And like I said before, years ago, he might be the first $100 million corner for the Giants because he's a game changer. And I love the fact that you don't hear a peep out of him, but he works hard and he's not afraid of the competition. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. And is there any corner that you're working with right now that might be someone to keep an eye on?
Yes, there is actually. There's a local kid. He played at UMass, went to Virginia Tech, was a high recruit. His name is Bryce Watts. This gentleman is around 6'1". He's about 190. He actually ran a 4.28. He ran it even faster, but they missed the clock or whatever the dynamic was. But the Patriots, I know the Jets, I know the Giants he's worked out for. He has a lot of guys. And truth be told, you can't beat a 4.28. And this is a gentleman, comes from a great family background, has faith. He's not going to be a kid who's in trouble off the field and can't beat a 4.28 at all with that type of size. He's a young man. Working with him, he gets it very fast. Reminds me of Darnay Holmes in terms of just understanding the moment. And I've always worked with him in terms of just, look, this is what you're going to expect in the NFL. And him getting to me early, he's going to be ready to play right away. So we'll see.
That's amazing. Well, everyone, make sure you keep an eye on Watts. Definitely could be a player the Giants scoop up at some point in the draft. Really excited to see, how these players unfold in the NFL, and it's going to be exciting to see their development as well. But thank you so much for coming on, Brian. I really hope you continue your awesome success in building Dbacks Academy. I'm excited to see your players kick some ass in the NFL.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you too, buddy.